This is Tara McGinnis, and this is Theatrical Makeup Design Interactive.
For this makeup, I'm going to be doing the Dadaist poet Tristan Tzara. Tristan Tzara was a man, so this will illustrate how to do a reverse sex makeup, as well as doing a historical dead person. In order to go and do Tristan Tzara, I'm going to go and have a rendering that I do based on as many photographs as I can get of him as a young man. So I take these several photographs and use them to make a guesstimate as to what his face looks like and how I can make that face apply to mine. Of the differences that you find between men's and women's faces, the two most pronounced ones tend to be women on average have narrower chins and larger eyes in proportion to the rest of their face. Shorter, narrower chins, larger eyes. Now, I don't really have to worry because I don't have a terribly narrow chin. It's a little soft in there, but it's a fairly strong chin. But my eyes are pretty large in the proportion to my face. One of the ways you can make your eyes seem less large is to put a fair amount of dark right close to it and a little bit to put them shadow, the usual trick to make your eyes look closer together. Reason for this is most adult humans have eyeballs roughly the same size. The difference is men's skulls tend to be larger than women's skulls. So the same size eyes look larger in a woman's face than in a man's face. So when you're going and putting on makeup, usually if you're female and you're trying to look male, you try and make your eyes look smaller and a little closer together. And your jaw appear more prominent. If you're male, you're trying to make your jaw diminish and your eyes look bigger. Those are the two main things you can do, other than attaching beards and mustaches and so on, to go and alter your appearance to look like that of the opposite sex. It is, however, generally easiest if you're a woman trying to go and do reverse sex, to go and find a picture of an actual guy that you want to go and use as the basis of your character makeup, so that you are copying not just generic guyness. You are copying a specific individual. It's much easier to see the changes in whether or not you hit your mark. So, Tristan Tzara is one of my personal favorites because he has certain elements of his face that are similar to mine, so I don't have to worry about them too much. Like his eyebrows are not too far off from my own, and those being a hard thing to move in my case, I'm inclined to especially like doing makeups that don't involve my moving them around so much. Now, up close in the real world, if you put a lot of dark around your eyes, it will tend to make your eyes look bigger. If, however, you're on stage at a distance, putting a lot of dark right close to your eyes tends to make them look smaller. You usually have to put a light ring of either color or white around the edges of your eyes to make your eyes look bigger, and then put a dark ring around that. So if I go and put this sort of darkness on it on a safe distance on stage, it's going to make those eyes look a little bit smaller in proportion to my face. We have the closer eyes together thing. Yes. He's a fairly young man, though, with close set eyes, so I don't need to do a lot of this because I don't want to age him too much. I did have a couple of little lines there, but pretty subtle. So, close together eyes. He also had a little bit of a pouch under the eye. Very small, but rather early in life. All those wild Dadaist parties, no doubt. Or more likely just inherited. So, a little bit of a sack under the eye. Not a lot of wrinkles or anything like that, though. He also has a far more prominent nose than I have. This time, I'm going to give myself a more prominent nose just using paint. So, I'm going to first do my shadows along the sides. I did that at a slightly wrong angle because his gets wider at the tip. Did that straight instead of an angle. Again, fairly subtle. I don't want this to look like an age makeup. Another part I can use to make the nose go a little longer. A little bit of darkness in there. And he has the beginnings of a nasolabial fold showing up. Not very much, again. He's a young man. A slightly thinner face, or at any rate, more Slavic-looking cheekbones. And then, using highlighter, he's got a broad forehead that this area, right through here, just above the eyebrows, is very pronounced. And a highlight that runs up here. He also, like me, has the eyebrow above the brow ridge fairly strongly, and a very visible highlight just under that brow. Like that. On the nose, now I'm going to put on the highlighter, and I'm going to make sure I get plenty of it down on the tip to suggest that down here is where the nose actually is. And a fair amount on the nostrils. Got bigger. As I say, he also has fairly pronounced cheekbones. Though they don't go straight across like they do with some people, they go down here because he has a bit of fleshiness in his face. So that's got, the bones are there, but there's, like in my face, there's extra flesh. To do the strong, I forgot one other place to put my highlight. I'll put highlight on the pocket under the eye, and the pocket under the eye. And a bit of highlight going here, where that early isolated fold is showing. Now, to give myself the stronger, straighter jawline of a young man, I'm going to take shadow and run it along, similar to what I did when I was doing corrective makeup. I was trying to give myself a neater jaw. I not only need a neater jaw, but I need it really rather firm. Okay, so in this case I'm going to use even more highlighter than I did for corrective. So here is the shadow. And now, the highlighter. Well, instead of just doing this little line here, I'm actually going to go and make sure that I put extra on the chin to make the chin look more prominent, and extra on the jaw so that the jaw really shows up. And he has an extremely firm chin going. So put that in there. However, the single thing about his face that is most different from mine has to do with his lips. It's not so much that his lips are that much wider. They're a little bit wider. The problem is, conventional wisdom in makeup says you cannot widen your lips with paint. What he has is not only a little bit of a wider mouth, but much more importantly, a wider lower lip. That is to say, it doesn't just come down in this little point here, but this lower point here is all the way out to either of these sides. Now, if I go and simply try and paint on the mouth that he has, where it's coming out here, about 1/4 of an inch wider, I'm going to look like the Joker in Batman. It will really, really look stupid and very unconvincing. So, what I'm going to do is show you the trick of how to widen your mouth when you can't really widen your mouth with paint. So, for the first part of this, I'm going to go and use the pink. And I'm going to go and make the shape of the mouth the same shape it would be if I were widening it without putting those corners on. Because his mouth is wider, instead of having 2 little points up here, like I do, he has those points over here. About 1/4 of an inch off. It's just a bigger curve to it. So when I want to put highlighter on these parts where I have these 2 little lines, I just cheat and I make those lines a little on the outside of them so that they point out to this wider set of lips. On the lower lip, it's the same sort of story. I take this, and instead of going and ending it here, I carry the line pretty much straight across down here. So I'm not making it poutier or much bigger down this way. I'm making it bigger out here. And then blending it out. This, on the other hand, just gives you sort of wide looking, but they don't carry out here. However, he also has little smile sections here. So what you do is you put in the same color that you're using for your lip color in here, so that it's part of a little wrinkle on either side. It's part of the nasolabial fold. So I can then go and put shadow along the edge here. And define an edge that still doesn't go past the corners of my mouth, but which suggests it does by the fact that there's color out here. To blend the border on that so it doesn't look quite so cartoony. And make sure I get enough of the red through here. And then the thing that ultimately will make it look whiter is when I go and take highlighter and put, as you would get on his mouth, the highlight going wider and further out. I can also run the highlighter just above in the upper lip, which will lend verisimilitude to my little painted in nose lines. And I can then put that highlighter area in here, and it gives the impression of seeming to connect the edges of the mouth with the smile lines a little bit. So he's got a much wider mouth than me, and doing this makes it look a little bit like I've got a wider mouth. It doesn't work that well as you are seeing it. When you get to see it on a distance on stage, it does actually seem, because your eye will put together parts of a picture that seem to go together. This is known as persistence of vision, which is why you can see stuff when you're looking through like a train window and you just see pieces at a time. You put together the pieces in your head as a continuous series of things. It's also how you see movies, where you're seeing frames per second. Your brain puts them together. Well, it does it in this kind of thing too. If you go and have something that's one color and then near it have something that's another color, and you're seeing it at a distance, you're just going to assume that this and this connect because they're the same color. So, have that. And I think I'm ready for my monocle. We want to adorn the zoo of art with all the flags of all the consulates.